You're watching part two of Making Music Magic on a Shoestring Budget, where we'll be talking about do-it-yourself activities for melody and harmony. So for the first activity for melody and harmony, we're going to talk about beanbags again. We briefly talked about them when we talked about Beanie Babies for rhythm. But we're going to bring them back now for beanbags. Again, it's a very cheap and sometimes free if you borrow them from your PE coach. I personally did that. I didn't have a bunch of beanbags in my classroom, so I've just borrowed them when the PE coach wasn't using them, obviously with their permission, and did a lines and spaces activity where, like as you can see on that top picture here, the students would throw the beanbag onto the staff, and then I said, okay, you had the red beanbag, what note or what line or space is that on? So you could do it either way. You could do them with actually the note names of the lines and spaces, or you could do like the numbers, like for instance, the red beanbag is on the second line, or you could say the red bag is on G. Or you could say the green bag obviously is on the fourth space, or you could say the green bag is on the letter E, just depending on your kind of the instructional purpose. The picture on the on the left, I wanted to show you, this is the carpet I had in my classroom where we would do this activity on. There's also other ways you could do this lines and spaces activity, things like the kind of the pre-made staff on the tablecloth, as you can see right there. I've also done this when I didn't have a fancy carpet like that with just lines of tape, and just did 5 lines of tape. And the cool part about that is you could have multiple lines of tape and do this in different groups as well. So it can kind of be a competition kind of thing. But I also wanted to mention, beside beanbags, obviously I don't have beanbags on that left picture there, but we were doing melodic notation of a song called Witch Witch Fell in a Ditch. And so I just found a kid-friendly picture of a witch off, Google Images or whatever, printed them off, laminated them so that I could use them a lot of times, a lot of instances in a lot of classes, and then we made melodic notation on that staff, which was really cool. So obviously it's like so me, so me. So it was a very so me based song, as you can see. But it was another way to notate that. I could have done that if I didn't have those, or I didn't want to create those kind of themed manipulatives. I could have done this with beanbags if I wanted to show, to show the melodic notation of the song. So there's different ways you can use beanbags to your advantage. I've also done beanbags where students created a melody on a staff instead of throwing it just to label the lines and spaces. There's so many ways you could use beanbags to help teach and enhance the concept of melody and pitch in your classroom. The next activity for melody is fly swatters. Now this can also be a lines and spaces activity, or it could be a notes on the staff activity, very similar to beanbags. I also added the same picture from the last slide, and I'll talk about that. But basically, purchasing or finding or even getting donated those very cheap fly swatters, you could find at your local dollar store. And it could be a competition between teams or groups. As you can see, I did like an example. I don't have any pictures of this, but students, you could say, all right, I want you to find the first line, and you had 2 students, and the 2 students have to slap the correct answer. As you can see, I intentionally made this one different. So one student did it correctly and one student didn't do it correctly. The bottom fly swatter was swatted on that first line as opposed to the first line at the top, which is really the 5th line. So it's kind of reinforcing the idea of the staff goes from bottom up, not top to bottom. And so you can do that in multiple ways. Okay, kids, with your fly swatters, I want you to find the letter B on the staff, and they have to go up and slap it on the board. I wanted to show you that picture again because it could be on, it doesn't have to be on the board, it could be on the floor with a carpet like that, or again with like masking tape or painter's tape that you put down on the ground as well. Whatever you're able to do, you can do that well. You can use fly swatters not only for that activity, but you can also use them for pointers, like you can see in that picture, which is another great use for them outside of the students using them. So again, just kind of depends. I don't have any videos of this. I just wanted to provide that kind of idea with you as we move on with melody. So for the third activity for Melody, I want to talk about just generally interactive whiteboard activities and how they can be effective. The example I have here of just one of them that I have is the song Doggy Doggy Where's Your Bone? This is a great activity for kindergarten and first grade. We're talking about high and low pitch, and then we're matching the pitch and introducing them to what that looks like on the staff. And as you can see in the picture with the doggy emojis, that I made that on PowerPoint, one slide. You know what I mean? I just made 2 lines, stuck the doggy for each of the thing, doggy, doggy, where's your bone? And then we talked about, well, the first doggy, doggy, is it high or is it low? As opposed to doggy, and they would say high or they would say low, and it would be wrong, and we would talk about that. So it was a great way for them not only to hear the high and low pitches, but also visualize the high and low pitches on the board. They didn't necessarily like manipulate it, but it was interactive because it was engaging, and I wouldn't show the dogs on the slides until we had kind of notated it on ourselves. And so that translated itself into the Doggy Doggy Where's Your Bone activity. And I put a picture of dog bone there because I actually just went to a pet store and found a very cheap dog bone, obviously not for my dog, but for the classroom. It was just like made it more real to them. You could have printed out a picture of a doggy bone, maybe something like this image right here, and then used that, laminated that, so to be used for multiple classes. But the dog bone, the real dog bone, you know, it's just one of those rawhide dog bones that I purchased, was super effective because they were like, has your dog eaten this? It was just a fun little activity. And so basically, the video that you're about to see, I want to explain it really quickly, is that there's one student in the middle who is the dog, and the students are sitting in a circle, and then what they do is the students have to pass the bone from student to the beat as they sing the song, doggy, doggy, where's your bone? Somebody stole it from your home. And then wherever the bone lands at that point, the dog that's in the middle sings, who stole my bone? And then the kid who has the bone, you know, behind their back, or it's hidden where the other student can't see, sings, I stole your bone. And then the dog has to find, through listening, and figure out who actually has the bone. And then when they find it, the students switch, and then the student that had the bone becomes the new dog, and the process moves on forward. All that to say, this sounds like a very just fun singing game, but really it's a really great way to have a formative assessment on can the students match pitch? Are they singing in a high voice? Excuse me, are they singing in a head voice? And are they able to sing alone? And because it's masked in this like cute little game, students aren't as apprehensive to sing by themselves, sing solo. So you'll see what I'm talking about in the video. It's super fun. The kids love it. All the kids want to be the dog at the end of the day, and they always ask to do this activity, you know, month after month after month after we do this activity. So hope you enjoyed that. I do want to mention too that sometimes interactive whiteboards don't have to be interactive whiteboard activities don't have to be PowerPoint based, or, you know, using a fancy projector and things like that if you don't have that. So I have an example here of some solfege hand signs that, again, I found online. I printed it on skin tone construction paper that I collaborated with my art teacher at my school. She allowed me to have different shades of skin tone colors, and I printed over the top of those, cut them out, laminated them, and then I used them when we're talking about solfege hand signs. Okay, we're going to talk about so, me, and la today, and I pull those out so the students can see those. Those can be interactive whiteboard activities too. So don't be afraid if you're too like, oh, I'm not that tech savvy, I could never make one of those doggy kind of things. You don't be afraid to do cut and paper and do the same thing. Print out a picture of a doggy and manipulate it that way. Kind of like I did with the Witch, where I printed out pictures of witches riding broomsticks, and they manipulated those on the board or on the floor or on, you know, taped staff or whatever, just depending on, again, kind of morphing it to what you're able to do in your classroom and depending on your budget. So I hope you enjoy this example of the Doggy Doggy Where's Your Bone for my classroom.
Here we go. Doggy, doggy, where's your bone?
So the fourth activity for Melody, I just wanted to bring back the kind of old school method of, laminated staff, paper. You could laminate, literally just print out a bunch of copies of staff paper, laminate it, and have students compose melodies and notate melodies that you're singing or that you're interacting with for an activity, and using that with a marker. Super simple. If you're not able to do that as well, you could just print out the paper and stick it in those like sheet protectors, so which again are super cheap, that you can buy from craft stores or from office stores, or you may actually have them again in your the staff kind of supply storage room, or other teachers may have it. So it could be free, it could be minimal purchase for this activity. And then I also wanted to provide, another kind of side of that is the little mini whiteboards. I know I've seen a lot of like other teachers use them in their classroom. So I asked them, hey, if you're not using these, can we borrow these for a couple of weeks? And then when I was able, I actually purchased my own class set of whiteboards. And then on top of that, you can do permanent marker if you want. I personally didn't do that, but I asked students to draw 5 lines. We had a class set of rulers, and they drew their 5 lines, and then we made composed melodies and notated melodies on the marker board. So just kind of provides you with that idea. Still highly effective. They're still doing it. Students are still learning the concept of melody and composition and notation of pitches on the staff and things like that, but they're doing it in kind of their own individual way. If you don't have class sets of them, you have maybe 5 or 6 or maybe 10 of them, think about splitting them up into groups and doing it in different ways. Again, just kind of morphing it to what you are able to do in your classroom to be effective for them. I also wanted to provide one activity for harmony. Harmony is a bit tricky to talk about. One, it's an abstract concept. Two, you have to, harmony is not something you can do alone. You have to do it unless you're playing an instrument, obviously. But in the elementary classroom, harmony was, again, a very abstract concept. So how do I make it less abstract for my students? So I developed this activity called Do You Want to Build a Snowman? Obviously, from a very popular musical that I'm sure you have heard before. But I did call it Do You Want to Build a Snowman? It was just a simple harmony activity, and we talked about how snowmen in particular are, there's 3 different sections for the most part. Sometimes there's 2 sections of the snowman, and the same thing can happen in music on the staff. And so I asked them to, I gave them a sheet of paper with 3 or 4, basically what you see on the screen right now, 3 or 4 different measures, and so they had to draw snowmen on the lines or spaces of the staff. They could decorate it however they wanted to be super silly with it, but the whole point of it was just to talk about how harmony is anything that happens when you play or sing 2 or more notes at the same time. And so it was easy for me to make that connection of, oh, this looks like a snowman because it's a whole note. And then I would, at the end of class, I would play their snowman. So it wasn't just like, okay, let's make snowmen because it's winter time. I actually played what, we weren't talking about chord progressions here. I was just wanting them to hear the 3 or 2 sounds at the same time. And that was kind of the activity. Again, this was just a piece of paper that I had printed and copied of staff lines. I modeled what it looks like. We talked about it, and then I sent them off with some pencils or some crayons or some markers, whatever you have available, and then they made it. And it was just a super fun way to talk about harmony and stuff like that. So I hope you enjoyed.